Good evening. This is Maestro with the Dawn of War 2 Retribution Elite Modcast. Today, we have a series from Elite League Division B from Season 5, and this is the semifinals of the playoff bracket stage. Our first player, Along Came a Spider, going to be playing as the Eversor Assassin. This is a damage melee commander who can trade off some of his health for extra damage for the Ordo Malleus, and his opponent, Inekura, will be playing as the Eldar Farseer, a support and debuffing Eldar hero. So then, at this point, the Elite League has actually already finished, so we are kind of casting these things after the fact. But, well, I won't spoil the results. I will try to cast it in order leading up to the finals, and you'll get to see what happens that way. But our first matchup here, we are going to have some Ordo Malleus against Eldar. And I've talked about this with both some other players on stream, in replays, and I do personally feel that Ordo Malleus does struggle a little bit against Eldar. At least they do struggle with Howling Banshees. And in some talks that I've had with some players, one of the suggestions that I've heard, in particular from a player named Torpid, who is quite good, he actually suggested one of the ways to deal with Howling Banshees from Eldar is to not get a strike squad. So I'm afraid that we already do see Along Came a Spider get a strike squad, and Torpid's reasoning for that is that the strike squad unfortunately do not do well against the Banshees. They do kind of lose to them in melee if special attacks get procced, and if they're in melee long enough against Banshees, those special attacks will be procced. And the suggestion instead from him was to go for a triple Inquisitorial Stormtrooper build. And the idea behind that, I'm pretty sure, is to try your best to simply focus down the Howling Banshees on their approach so that they take so much damage that eventually they will need to be forced off the field. It is a kiting strategy. I'm also afraid that it's a kiting strategy that might eventually result in Ordo Malleus being pushed off the map. And in this case, we do even see that Along Came a Spider chose to get grenade launchers on one of these Inquisitorial Stormtrooper squads, so he might be thinking about trying to use the grenade barrage as a way of disruption to control the Howling Banshees, but that does present some problems of its own. If it connects, the effect should be very good, but the problem is actually trying to connect, with Grenade Barrage being a pretty slow ability. And let me just double check to make sure it is technically called a Grenade Barrage. Yes, it is. And a Eldar player who is really paying attention might just be able to micro away from it when the visual effect for the Grenade Barrage is apparent. And additionally, getting those grenades means you do give up a few of the las guns, which does mean you do kind of lose some of the focus fire. And the regular grenades, just from the basic attack out of the grenade launcher models, are very, very likely to miss against a fleet of foot Howling Banshee squad. So we see now that Along Came a Spider has chosen to get Inquisitorial Operatives. They are a unit they're kind of a utility unit for the Ordo Malleus. Now, they have shotguns, but unlike the other two shotgun units in the game, the Scouts as well as the Catachan Devils, they do not have a defensive shotgun blast ability. So it's just in case you see shotguns and expect that they're going to blast back the Howling Banshees, that isn't something that's going to happen. But one thing we will see there is the use of that Incendiary Grenade, and that is one of the utility abilities that the Inquisitorial Operatives have. An Incendiary Grenade basically just working as a area of effect damage over time ability. So right now, Along Came a Spider doing okay, though, in spite of trying to talk about all the potential struggles that the Ordo Malleus can deal with in this matchup. Some grenades doing some nice damage against those Rangers, though. That looks like even just one barrage taking about 40% out of the Rangers' hit points. Rangers, of course, not exactly a tanky unit. Grenade goes in on the Stormtroopers. Does take out one model. And now the Dire Avengers will take cover inside the garrison, but I think they're at low enough hit points that there will just be like enough range damage that would force them out. So Inekura, I think he realizes this and decides to cut his losses. In fact, he manages to get the Dire Avengers out of there with no losses whatsoever, which is actually pretty lucky as well as optimal. Purgation Squad is finally out on the field for Along Came a Spider, Purgation being the primary answer for the Ordo Malleus to controlling melee units. Since there are plenty of melee units to deal with, it's pretty common to see Ordo Malleus players get Purgation Squads. Sometimes you'll even see them get 2 Purgation Squads. Additionally, since they're also a Flamer unit, they also do give you that potential generator bashing ability, which is a way to just punish your opponent pretty hard if they're either not protecting their generators or if you do win engagement. What are these Inquisitorial Stormtroopers doing? They get special attacked by the Farseer. This is horrible, and they haven't even been retreated yet. I'm pretty sure this is a wipe on the Inquisitorial Stormtroopers. Yeah, that was pretty rough. Unfortunately, not seeing that. I mean, it basically just looked like he lost track of the squad, and then after losing track of the squad, well, I don't think he ever even regained track of the squad because there was never even an attempt at a retreat. And they just got hit by more special attacks. Now, this is looking kind of monka. We have Banshees approaching. Okay, Inquisitorial Stormtroopers will get in the garrison. My God, what happened to the operatives? I think they just took some damage from the Rangers. They were already so low there. They were kept in at a time when they were so low. It was super risky. And then they ended up going down. So 2 squads down now for Along Came a Spider. He's getting a Purgation Squad, and he's also calling a GG already. Wow. Okay, so that will be a quick end to Game 1 in this series. Inekura will go up 1-0. This is a best of 5, however, so it's the first player to 3 game wins. Let's now move on to game number 2. For game number 2 in our best of 5 series between Along Came a Spider and Inekura. It will be taking place on Quest Heresy. Along Came a Spider this time will be playing as the brother captain of the Ordo Malleus, tanky melee hero who cannot be knocked down or suppressed, and his opponent, Inekura, will be switching over to the Imperial Guard. He will be playing as the Lord General. This is the only hero in the game who is squad-based, and he can focus on buffing his own units with area of effect abilities. Now, we do see this Imperial Guard out of Inekura, and this is something I'm a little bit curious about. From all the things I've been hearing, Imperial Guard is actually, in their current state, is regarded as one of the weaker races in Elite Mod at the moment, just with the way the balance of the game has shifted with the various changes over time. So we'll see just what they can do. Brother Captain will be approaching here, and we already see the generator put down by Along Came a Spider, which does likely indicate that he's not going for any additional Stormtroopers or another strike squad, and will instead probably be looking at a tier 1.5 unit as his next purchase. Inekura, however, going for historically a very typical build for the Imperial Guard, getting the double Sentinel as well as, sorry, not the double Sentinel, the double Guardsman, as well as the single Sentinel, very typical build. Sentinel has been upgraded with the ground pound. It did actually miss a stomp against the Strike Squad, but the Strike Squad are now getting pretty low. Now look and see where this Lord General is going. He's not choosing to focus on the Brother Captain or the Strike Squad, instead choosing to force melee against the Inquisitorial Stormtroopers. Doing that because the Lord General actually has somewhat decent melee damage. The Lord General is also one of the literally unique things about him, something that he can do that, at least unless I'm potatoing and forgetting something, no one else in this entire game can do, is that he can actually reinforce his retinue members out on the field, and he doesn't even need a transport or a relay beacon to do it. So that gives the Lord General a lot of sticking power in combat, because you might think he's getting low, but then suddenly he gets a reinforcement right out on the field. And this can be especially helpful when the Lord General is trying to tie up other units. So he will be able to tie up the Inquisitorial Stormtroopers very well in that regard, as well as bleed them, even though he's not quite a dedicated melee unit. All right, map control is slightly in favor of Inekura. I'm almost tempted to say map control is in favor of no one. Not because it's even, but because not much of the map has actually been controlled at all yet, particularly by Along Came a Spider, controlling only his natural power farm, none of the victory points, no requisition points. Inekura definitely with a better end of map control, at least controlling some of his natural resource points. And, I mean, Along Came a Spider, even a little bit slow getting back out on the field to control it. So that tells me that he's been very aggressive about taking engagements and not about actually controlling the resources. We'll see if that potentially could have a negative impact on him, if it ends up biting him in the ass, a more colorful way of saying have a negative impact. And once again, we're going to see the Lord General focus on tying up the Inquisitorial Stormtroopers, really just make it hard for them to do anything. He's moving away now. Focus fire on the strike squad. Sentinel does get a stomp on the Brother Captain, and once again, we're going to see the Lord General move in for that force melee on the Inquisitorial Stormtroopers, just really making their life harder and making it hard for them to do anything. And Lord General now is actually fairly tanky, 1,449 hit points. That comes from having the 2 retinue members. That's the maximum, of course. He does also have a Sergeant retinue member. The Sergeant doesn't exactly add a lot of damage, but what he does give you is the ability to distribute med packs to any of your squads. All right. Does look like the Lord General, in this case, getting controlled by the Purgation, but the Purgation themselves getting controlled by the Sentinel with that stomp. Brother Captain is the only one who is here. And, I mean, look at this with... Okay, it does look like the Purgation squad must have been used to actually burn down some generators while I wasn't looking, or at least burn down most of this power node. But we see that even with all this aggressive positioning by Along Came a Spider, he's not taking advantage of it to actually capture the map. And it definitely worries me with just what his economy should look like given this. I mean, I guess certainly doesn't have the power income. Actually, Inekura doesn't have much more in terms of power, but he definitely has more in terms of requisition by actually controlling 2 fully matured requisition points compared to none for Along Came a Spider. Along Came a Spider only just now captured a requisition point, but it is not fully matured, so it's only giving him +10 compared to the +30 of each of Inekura's. All right, Inekura now looking for a power bash. He controls the map. This is looking pretty strong for Inekura at the moment. Catachan Devils, though, going to be looking to go in probably for some force melee against the Purgation, because they do actually do pretty good damage in melee. However, they could be overwhelmed here. They do get a heal from the Mad Pack that was distributed by the Sergeant from the Lord General's retinue member. Purgation squad is really low, but the Catachan Devils are also pretty low as well. Now they're getting suppressed. They're so low, I don't think they can make it out of here. And they also get a super unfortunate retreat path. I think they just went in there way too deep. I think at some point, once those Purgation had pulled back as low as they were, I think the Catachan Devils needed to pull out. I think Shotgun Blast needed to be used against the Interceptors to cover their retreat. And what looked like a strong position for Inekura ends up being a major turnaround for Along Came a Spider to lose those Catachan Devils. Now, that being said, Along Came a Spider still needs to try to start converting this into map control at some point. Like, I don't... Well, okay, we do have 3 units committed by Along Came a Spider trying to deal with this Lord General as well as this Sentinel. As long as Inekura can get out of here without losing the Lord General or the Sentinel, I think this is a winning trade for him because of the amount of time that he buys stalling Along Came a Spider out from actually taking back the map. Inekura will be moving to Tier 2 first, which it makes a huge amount of sense. He's gone for a smaller Tier 1. He has I was about to basically say redundant things, that he's gone for a smaller Tier 1, which means he's invested less. Whereas Along Came a Spider has 2 Tier 1.5 units in both the Purgations and the Interceptors. And now if I'm taking a look at these Purgations, if they're ignoring this victory point, going past here, they're probably looking for like this sneaky wraparound in an attempt to bash this generator farm. However, it looks like the Lord General is in the path and may be able to deter this. Yeah, and then it's just immediate retreat called. So not a whole lot achieved by the Purgation squad at that moment. Long retreat path for them as well. In that case, I mean, I understand what he was going for, and if it had worked, it would have been a pretty big reward. But given that it didn't work, I think at this point it might have just been better to go for the safer play of actually capturing some of these resource points, because he's literally never controlled them this entire game, as far as I can remember. So Inekura still with that lead in map control, going to be getting a Chimera. So Chimera, the core Imperial Guard unit in Tier 2. A lot of Imperial Guard play revolves around that Chimera use, and the synergy it has with Guardsmen kind of displaces the Sentinel in the role that it has for Imperial Guard, as the Sentinel becomes a lot harder to keep alive in Tier 2. And if you upgrade it to the missile launcher, which does help it scale, it still serves very, very different purposes, since you're not doing the low sustained damage that you would get out of the multi-laser. That Sentinel missile launcher instead providing you with anti-vehicle damage or area of effect burst damage against infantry. Does look like Interceptors jumping in. They did get the energy regeneration that comes out of either the Sanctify Global or the Purify ability that comes on several Ordo Malleus squads. And the Interceptors ultimately not achieving much here. I mean, just the fact that they lost a model already, this is a losing trade for Along Came a Spider. I don't think he even has the upgrades to really get anything else done aside from just trying to whack on that Chimera with those swords, which isn't actually a good use of them at this time. Chimera driving forward. Oh my god, there is an IED taking out 2 of those Purgation models. Luckily for Along Came a Spider, the other model, the third one, was nowhere near that IED and does end up getting out of there just fine with actually most of its hit points. So finally, Along Came a Spider has managed to basically just convert the map into his favor. Plasma guns will be upgraded on both of Inekura's Guardsman squads, and he is also getting the Commissar. That Commissar will help the Guardsmen economically. They will reinforce 3 Guardsmen for the cost of 1, as opposed to the 2 for cost of 1 that they had before with just their Sergeant. And it also helps a lot with the Chimera, since the expectation with how you're going to use the Chimera is that you're going to let the Guardsmen die and then just reinforce them from the Chimera. Gives you a lot of on-the-field staying power. And although it's expected that you will be paying requisition for reinforcement costs, it's usually with the hope that you will out-trade your opponent, because with those plasma guns, he should be able to kill a lot of the Interceptors, a lot of the Strike Squad models. However, Chimera getting very, very close to dying there from this Las Cannon Rhino. Only one more shot will finish off that Chimera, since this Las Cannon Rhino does do 100 anti-vehicle damage. I believe anti-vehicle damage was a special kind of damage created just for this. And amazingly, the Sentinel goes down there. Rather surprising. It's going to be a heavy turret called down from Inekura to see if he can finish off the Rhino. Heavy turret is being targeted, but a creeping barrage knocks over the Purgation squad to prevent it from continuing to do damage, and the heavy turret actually finishes off the Rhino. That's a pretty good play. So full retreat now from Along Came a Spider. Heavy turret is pretty low, so it will need some repairs if Inekura intends to get any further value out of it. However, I also think it's going to be very, very hard to get any further value out of it. I actually really don't like this Executioner Cannon upgrade, since I already said I think it's going to be hard for this turret to get further value, because I think Along Came a Spider, now that he knows that it's there and it wasn't used in the middle of engagement and placed right next to his unit, I think he can keep the Purgation squad as well as this upcoming or impending Vindicare Assassin at long distance and just target the heavy turret outside of its range, especially now that it has an Executioner Cannon, which I'm pretty sure has shorter range than the starting turret that it has. I think some of the thought process behind the heavy turret is that since it does plasma cannon damage, it's very, very good against pretty much all of the infantry squads out of Along Came a Spider. But again, I would really just expect the Purgation as well as the Vindicare Assassin. They'll just stand at a distance and just target the heavy turret from range. However, Chimera's going to move forward. Chimera will take a shot or get shot by the Vindicare Assassin, so it does need to be careful there. At the moment, I'm not sure. We do have one squad of Guardsmen here repairing it. Where's the other one? The other one's here, trying to get a cat. Where's the Lord General? Lord General is in the middle, so he is retreating. Ideally, you really want both of the guardsman squads with the Chimera so that they're ready for repairs, they can jump out. And again, we actually see this exactly right here, that the Vindicator Assassin finishes off the heavy turret. They were not even being targeted by the heavy turret because they straight up outranged it. So we saw the heavy turret get value, but we also definitely see the limitations of the heavy turret right there as a stationary building, which is a redundant phrase by definition. Most buildings are stationary. Okay, Inekura, though, does manage to get the map back in his favor. Yeah, I mean, he still has the map control. He still has the victory point lead. He does have a very small army at the moment, though, having lost that Sentinel. Got those wonderful Apollo Diomedes lines being given to the Brother Captain. May the Emperor bless Apollo Diomedes for all the amusement he has brought us. Oh my god, this Chimera now in a huge amount of trouble. I think it gets around the Purgation firing arc, but there's still the matter, excuse me, of the Vindicator Assassin. Okay, Vindicator Assassin is being focused down. He does get another shot off, but the repairs for the Chimera keep it alive. However, the Purgation is resetting up. Where is the Chimera going? Needs to get out of the line of sight of the Purgation squad. It's just driving back and forth. Inekura lamenting the pathing. Need to fire or even execute the driver of that Chimera. And that Chimera will be gone. Okay, heal does go down for this squad of guardsmen. But at this point, Inekura, things have looked so good for him for much of the game with his map control. But when you're down to 2 units against 5, that is a problem. Realistically, Inekura should not be able to win direct fights against Along Came a Spider anymore. Both players are now going to Tier 3. So at this point, my guess is Inekura probably looking for a Lehman Russ, because I'm just thinking of, like, what can you do going to Tier 3 to justify going to Tier 3 when you are missing so many units? All right, Along Came a Spider does have the double cap, and he's going to look to make it a triple. So certainly at this point, Along Came a Spider has struggled on map control for most of the game, but with this big of a lead in terms of his army, there's really no excuse for him to be behind on map control anymore. He can afford to give up this victory point, but he should just be able to trade it out for the contested victory point. Inekura looking to move around, see if he can get some back caps with this Lord General as well as the Guardsmen. He's slightly deterred by the Inquisitorial Stormtroopers launching in their grenade barrage. Does knock them over briefly, but eventually they will get back up. And I feel like actually the Guardsmen as well as the Lord General should ultimately outgun the Purgation Squad. And probably the Stormtroopers. Stormtroopers, again, they will shoot their grenades. Grenades do pretty good burst damage against bunched up infantry. Not quite so much against the Lord General, since the Lord General is made up of fewer models, and each individual model tends to be a little bit tankier than, say, something like Guardsmen. Okay, there the Purgation are forced off by the Guardsman squad that was actually not being targeted by anyone except for the Brother Captain. And once the Brother Captain got in range, the Guardsmen did retreat there. And it will indeed be a Lehman Russ out of Inekura. I hate to say this, like, I'm going to put on my Captain Obvious helmet here, but it's going to be very, very important for Inekura to keep the Lehman Russ alive. Again, just because he has such a smaller army at the moment. His army at the moment also really does revolve heavily around this Lehman Russ. And I'm also a little bit surprised by this late Stormtrooper pickup. Why the Stormtroopers? Is he expecting a vehicle out of Along Came a Spider? And I would also regard that as pretty surprising, because normally when I think of what Ordo Malleus wants in Tier 3, I usually think of those Terminators as being a more typical purchase than the Land Raider Crusader, and especially the Paladins, because the Brother Captain, now Paladins are exclusive to the Brother Captain, and it does look like, yes, those are the Terminators. No, sorry, those are the Terminators and not the Paladins. I would more expect the Paladins because they are generally more versatile than the Terminators, and he actually cancels the Terminators, so maybe we'll get the Paladins instead. But again, why the Stormtroopers? And especially why with the Assault Kit? I would think if he's going to get late stormtroopers, that he would maybe just assume that he might have to deal with a vehicle and put the anti-armor kit, or even if he's not going to put the anti-armor kit, leave the stormtroopers without an upgrade to keep it flexible. Okay, this will be the Terminator call-in. My guess is Along Came a Spider had the power and requisition for Terminators. Sorry, the Paladins. Or rather, probably had the power and requisition for both, but he was waiting on enough red to get the Terminators. Or sorry, the Paladins. Oh my god, we're mixing them up as this Leman Russ in so much trouble. This Leman Russ has nowhere to go. Vindicare will finish it off, I think. I don't even know who got the final kill, but either way, it was just trapped.
The enemy is claiming a victory point.
Okay, and it's down. And I don't understand the Stormtroopers unless something has been changed. Like, unless Casterkins have been changed. Like, I've definitely missed a lot of balance patches. But unless Casterkins have been changed in significant ways, I don't really understand the choice of getting Assault Kit Stormtroopers in Tier 2. Okay, here's the argument that I can think of it. I think he might actually not be wanting the Stormtroopers for their ability to fight, but for their infiltration rather, and to try to look for backcaps. That's the best I can make out of it. Those Stormtroopers will not be good against the Paladins. Especially now that these Paladins have an incinerator. Plasma gunshots from the Guardsmen will be going in on the Strike Squad. Level 3 Strike Squad will be retreating out of there before they lose a model. So, Stormtroopers are opening fire on the Paladins, but again, they do not do very good damage at all, as we can kind of see that there. They're doing barely anything. Because the Assault Kit Stormtroopers, those hotshot lasguns, although they do pretty good base DPS, they're still piercing damage weapons. Piercing damage weapons are very, very poor against super heavy infantry armor. I'm forgetting a little bit on my statistics, but I'm pretty sure the damage penalty for piercing against super heavy infantry armor, I believe it's either 60 or 70%. I'm pretty sure it's one of those. Regardless of which one it is, both of those are bad. Even though 60 is the lower number, it's still just so little that Assault Kit Stormtroopers are going to do against Terminators. So victory points are now finally ticking, or will soon be ticking in favor of Along Came a Spider. Ever since, I mean, Inekura has just lost all 3 of his core units for the Imperial Guard. There was the Sentinel, the Chimera. I think he actually lost the Chimera before the Sentinel. I'm actually not sure. I don't remember. And then he lost the Leman Russ. So those were all basically the units that his army really revolves around in their respective tiers. And without them, he's just not really able to fight Along Came a Spider anymore. Oh, yes. The classic Diomedes. Brother, I am hit. Paladins will walk through the wall and start opening fire with their incinerator. A second Leman Russ coming out of Inekura. At this point, it's a question of does it make it out in time for it to have an impact? So backcap will be coming from the Guardsmen. However, although the plasma guns do great damage against the Strike Squad will be able to get in melee. There's also a lot of support here from the Interceptors. Inekura is just trying to finish the cap. At this point, I don't even think it's worth it. He'll lose the squad, and indeed he does end up suiciding the squad. Basically playing desperately at this point, possibly even getting nervous and losing track of them. Lord General's in a huge amount of trouble too, and before he can get wiped in retreat, that will just be a concede coming out of Inekura. So we will have our series tied up at 1-1 with Along Came a Spider putting a point on the board as we move on to Game 3. Our series is tied up at 1-1 as we move into the third game of this series on Calderis Refinery. Along Came a Spider will now be playing as the Space Marine Apothecary, healing commander for the Space Marines' targeted heal and passive heal regeneration aura. His opponent, Inekura, continuing with the Imperial Guard, and this time playing as the Lord Commissar, slightly tanky melee hero, also can possibly be seen as a support hero with that execute ability. Calderis Refinery, my God, what a classic map. It's so stock. It's so stock. So many games have been played on this map. It goes back so long. This map is about as old as Texas Children at this point, which only a few of you will actually get that joke, but let's just move on into it. So Inekura are going to be sticking with that Imperial Guard, even though, as I've said, they're regarded as a bit weak. Standard build again, double guardsman, single sentinel. Along Came a Spider, very interestingly, choosing to, at the moment, doesn't seem like he's going for a second scout squad. He's got the one scout, the one tack. Normally, the typical build for Imperial Guard in 1v1 is scout, tack, scout. However, sometimes I think, particularly against Imperial Guard, you might see the deviation from that build, as scouts may be seen as contributing a little bit less against the Imperial Guard, since they can be focused down pretty easily by the Sentinel, out-traded against by both the Sentinel as well as the Guardsman, and they don't do a great job at putting a lot of pressure against either the Sentinel or the Guardsman. So, Commissar right here, using his Refractor Field or Shield, will be chasing after the Tactical Marines. I don't think this is actually a very good use of the Commissar's time, because eventually we will see the heal on the Tactical Marine, and eventually he will be forced off. Arguably, you could say it is worth his time, because he's currently drawing the attention of 2 units, with only himself. So it's kind of like 2 units taking care of 1. So actually, yeah, I think I might take that back. I think this is worth Inekura's time. And he's taking advantage of that time to use his other Guardsman squad to start getting control of the map, especially since that does basically mean that he was tying up, or not tying up since that conflicts with the technical term in the game, but he was keeping Along Came a Spider's entire army busy, just drawing the attention with that Lord Commissar. So it will be a Devastator put out on the field for Along Came a Spider, and I do think this does make sense. I do think Devastators do quite well against the Imperial Guard. It's generally felt that suppression teams are pretty good against Imperial Guard, who don't really have as strong responses to it as many other races. They don't have a Tier 1 jump unit. In fact, I don't think they have a jump unit, period. And it's a bit hard to deal with these suppression teams in Tier 1, and I think Space Marines quite possibly do that better than anyone.
One of our generators is under attack.
Excuse me. And I say that in part because you do have the potential advanced targeting upgrade on the Devastators. Advanced targeting, improving the damage that the Devastator Marines will do, does give up their suppression, but against Imperial Guard, that doesn't actually matter as much. And those Vengeance rounds also pretty good against dealing with the Sentinel. If a Imperial Guard player is not careful, tries to bring in the Sentinel aggressively for a stomp, it could result in an early Sentinel loss if the Vengeance rounds are popped. So indeed, we do see the advanced targeting, and I really think that is a no-brainer at this point. Just how good I think it can be. Given when you have 2 Devastator squads, you can actually have that option of putting advanced targeting on only one of them. And before you make a YouTube comment to try to correct me on something, yes, I am aware of the fact that you can actually go for a las cannon even after you've already purchased advanced targeting. So theoretically, we could even see Vengeance rounds or advanced targeting put on both of the Devastator Marine squads and still be able to see las cannons later. However, there is, although you have that flexibility like you would with a Tactical Marine squad, still not exactly always desirable to put it on both because of the fact that you're still spending resources to do so. Does look like a Tactical Marine model was killed. I think it was killed by another IED out of Inekura. I say another, referring back to the IED from Game 2. However, with this push, with the support of both Devastator Marine squads, Tactical Marines will be able to burn down generators without too much trouble, I think. Now, Catachan Devils are one of the supposed answers to Devastator Marines, but as we're probably going to see right here in this engagement, I'd say they're a very soft answer at best. In fact, Catachan Devils are in a huge amount of trouble here. They don't actually manage to dislodge the Devastator Marine Squad, despite using both of their disruption abilities against it. Now, the reason that is because the Catachan Devils, their abilities against the Devastator Marines are their ranged abilities. The old reliable, and although the Shotgun Blast is short range, it's still ranged. So after the Devastator Marine Squad is disrupted, it can usually just get back up again and set up all over again. Oh my god, the Commissar taking a huge amount of damage from these Vengeance rounds, and I think he goes down there. Indeed, he does. However, somewhere, I did miss it, but somewhere on this map, along came a spider, did lose his scouts. So silver linings for Inekura. However, he lost his whole generator farm. Is he going to be able to trade this out? He does burn down a generator as well as a power node, but we're going to see a drop pod, likely with a squad of tactical marines inside, and that should be enough to force off this guardsman squad. I think they're going to be looking to at least finish off the decap, and indeed they do, but it's got to be a retreat for them now, otherwise they risk dying entirely. Okay, he finally gets it. He's not going to be lucky enough. I don't even know if it's a matter of luck. I think that was just he stayed in there too long. So not going well for Inekura. Not happy with his own play. Now, for other races to deal with setup teams, other races at least have the option of a jump unit. It doesn't mean they'll always get it, and a jump unit isn't necessarily the only way to deal with setup teams, but it's at least just an option. And part of the reasons why it can be a good option, things like Storm Boys, Raptors, Interceptors, Assault Marines, is that after the disruption on the setup team, you also get sustained damage from the melee damage from the jump squad, especially with many of those jump squads actually having very high melee damage. And even the lower damage ones, like the Assault Marines or the Raptors, still do high enough damage just by virtue of being a melee unit, since melee units in general have higher base damage than a lot of ranged units. It's going to be the Apothecary with this customized Stormbolter, which I often feel... I've always personally liked this upgrade the best for the Apothecary. Dark Riku, a very good Apothecary player, however, has shown us the value of the Sanguine Chainsword in many matchups. However, against the Imperial Guard, I kind of feel like the customized Stormbolter has to be the way to go. Otherwise, I think your Apothecary would just get focused down too much. And if he has a melee weapon, I think he just doesn't contribute much to combat. So at least if he has a customized Stormbolter, he does about a little bit more damage than 2 TAC models. And that can put more pressure on the Sentinel, kite the Commissar even more. Commissar getting really low. I mean, he just can't get in there. I think he tried, yeah, to reduce the range of the Devastator Marine Squad. I forget if it was a flare or just the abilities from the Artillery Spotter Squad. And he's already actually calling a GG on this one, just saying, let's go to the next match. Just not able to handle the composition out of Along Came a Spider. Hasn't called the concede yet, though. Okay, finally it is there. All right, then. So that will be Along Came a Spider going up 2-1 in this series. One more, and he punches his ticket to the finals of Elite League Division B. Let's now move on to game number 4. Game number 4 of our best of 5 series will be taking place on Calderas Desert. Along came a spider. Now he's going to be the one playing the Imperial Guard. It's going to be the Inquisitor. This is a spellcasting and battlefield manipulation hero. Can also become a melee tank if you want. His opponent, Inekura, will be playing as the Eldar Warlock. This is a melee hero who can either become a spellcaster or a tank. Almost doesn't sound too much different from the Inquisitor. My, Calderas Desert. Now this one shares the name with Calderas Refinery, but this one, not stock. Still actually feels pretty new to me. Chances are it's probably been in the Elite mod for a couple of years, though. Custom map made by some of the community members. I forget which one, but that's okay. So, double Dire Avengers out from Inekura, which is rather expected when playing against Imperial Guard. Although normally in most matchups, Banshees would be standard after the Dire Avengers. Against Imperial Guard, that's not really the case, since it's typically very much expected that Banshees will just be kited, they will just bleed a lot, and if they ever even somehow make it into melee with the Guardsmen, Sentinel should be ready with a stomp to deter their approach. And even if you have an Eldar player who would be kind of wise to the Sentinel Stomp, maybe try to run away from the Sentinel Stomp before it can actually stun them and then put it on cooldown, it still might just be enough time bought for the Guardsman as well as the Sentinel to just focus fire down Banshees. So we don't often see Banshees against Imperial Guard. Double Dire Avengers, on the other hand, does help you a bit more with putting pressure on the Sentinel, putting pressure on the Inquisitor. Well, Inquisitor could definitely be pressured by the Banshees, but I think it's more about the Sentinel, really. Putting pressure on both the Sentinel as well as the Guardsman squads who repair it. This Dire Avenger squad, however, is being pressured more so than the Sentinel. They will be pressured into retreating. We're just going to repeat the word pressure for like this whole game. And it does lose a model in response there. I don't like this staggered approach from this other Dire Avenger squad. Yeah, that Dire Avenger squad had nothing to achieve there by approaching that angle and opening fire. It's only one Dire Avenger squad against both the Sentinel and a squad of Guardsmen. It will bleed disproportionately if it did lose any models, so Inekura was able to get out of there before it bled anything. So we see the Guardian weapon team yet again, and it's going to be a second Guardian weapon team. So again, using that double suppression team play against the Guard, since it is strong. Sentinel, however, this Sentinel does manage to get around the Guardian weapon team firing arc. Now it is just firing at the Guardian models. Will have to back up, though. It does not commit a stomp, doesn't actually have a stomp, and does get out of the firing arc of the Guardian weapon team eventually, but there was a burst of fire against it. So Sentinel continuing to put some pressure on that Warlock. So Sentinel, I mean, I feel like I've talked about this so many times just over the years, but the Sentinel, the way it works is it does very slow sustained damage. It only does something like about 30 DPS, which is not a high number. Dire Avengers do about 43 DPS as a squad if they have all of their models. But the reason the Sentinel works is because it is considered a vehicle. That means it does not bleed. So anytime it's firing against a squad, even if it's doing damage very slowly, it will ultimately out-trade it. Because if the squad loses even a single model, it has already lost economically in comparison to the Sentinel. And then the Sentinel is just given repairs by Guardsman Squad, and those two kind of have synergy with each other. So typically, when you're dealing with a Sentinel, you want to usually put more pressure on the Guardsman rather than the Sentinel itself, especially if the repairs are actually happening right in the moment. Okay, Artillery Spotter does drop a smoke grenade. However, the Sentinel taking so much damage, getting so close. Will it even be kept alive? I think he's got to keep moving it back before it, like, it even... I think he kind of got lucky there. Guardian weapon team will be shooting again. However, there it does get disrupted. Yeah, there it actually does need to be real careful about getting out there alive. Could have risk going down. Second Guardian weapon team. Why is it not shooting? Okay, finally does open fire on the Inquisitor. And you have to be real careful about charging right down the line of fire of a Guardian weapon team. Even if you think it's not set up, or even if there's just something where it has been hindered. Just because if you find yourself getting shot at by really any setup team point blank, it does more damage the closer you get to it. So you have to be really, really careful about doing that, especially with your heroes, or really any unit, because you could lose tons of models. If you're using your hero unit, you could be losing the hero. And what a huge build out of Along Came a Spider. He's going to get double suppression teams himself. He's got the double heavy weapon teams. He's got such a big build, though. Now, at least, although it fills up the unit panel, these are at least relatively cheap Tier 1 units. Certainly compared to if you think of like other races like Ordo Malleus, where we don't have units that cost as much as like a Interceptor squad. But still, it's a big tier 1. Looking like he's trying to fight fire with fire. Those suppression teams against suppression teams. Inekura with a much smaller build. Inquisitor will not be able to finish that capture there. Meanwhile, Inekura actually has control over the natural requisition point for Along Came a Spider, so at least it feels like to me that map control isn't really Along Came a Spider's greatest strength as a player. Often seeing him struggle with map control in many of these maps. This map actually looks like one of the better ones in terms of his map control. I mean, he does have such a big army, but we still actually had this requisition point, natural requisition point for him that was capped by Inekura and was fully matured in favor of Inekura. This Guardian weapon team super low there, does need to retreat or it would have gone down. Grenade attempt by the Dire Avengers does tag 2 of the models on this heavy weapon team. However, they lost a model themselves. Will they lose another one? Okay, looks like they get out of there with 4. Oh, where are these guardsmen going? Probably just moving in like a capture order or something on the victory point, but just ran into a lot more that they could deal with. Got knocked over by the Warlock, who has been upgraded with the Immolator Blade. Immolator Blade, out of all these weapon upgrades, I think the Immolator Blade has always been a decent choice against the Imperial Guard. And the Immolator Blade has also been improved over time since like I played in 2017 or cast in 2017, where it now also does it does damage over time even on its ranged attacks. So it is seen as a bit stronger these days, and that Immolate ability it's actually not super impressive, but I think it's just better than the alternatives against Imperial Guard. Since if you do the Merciless Witchblade, that doesn't really help the Warlock to really do a whole lot more against the Guardsmen or the heavy weapons teams. And Ethereal Slash not available in Tier 2, and also something that a little bit hard to get value out of. Immolator Blade just gives you that Area of Effect spell, and that actually means that he has 2 Area of Effect spells, which he can use to just kind of do a 1-2 punch on Guardsman squads. Grenade will go in on the heavy weapon team, does take it pretty low, but the Dire Avengers themselves losing a few models. Looks like only 1 in the end. Got to be real careful with that Sentinel moving up that aggressively. He did have the disruption from the artillery spotter, but the Guardian weapon team is just setting up again. And he actually loses the Sentinel, not respecting the Guardian weapon team in that case. Okay, meanwhile on this side, I didn't realize it, but with Inekura being in Tier 2, he puts out a Falcon that Along Came a Spider doesn't at the moment have much of a way of dealing with. Okay, he will be upgrading to a las cannon. But now the squad's not set up for some reason. And they're kind of bugging out. He retreats them. And this will be a full generator bash in favor of Inekura. And I mean, definitely the Falcon doesn't have too much of a counter. Actually, we are going to see some Stormtroopers probably going to be looking for an anti-armor kit. But then there's also the Warp Spiders. And my God, the Warp Spiders, I think, are going to do so well against much of what Along Came a Spider has. They will definitely outshoot the Guardsmen. They do way more damage than the Guardsmen. So they'll probably just take down the health of Guardsman squads before the Guardsman squads does enough damage to scare them off. Artillery spotters don't stand a chance against Warp Spiders. The Warp Spiders can also teleport around the firing arcs of the heavy weapons teams. So yeah, I mean, at the moment, these Warp Spiders, I think, are going to get huge amount of value for Inekura. Although with any luck, hopefully I'm not caster cursing him and he doesn't just like get them wiped in the next engagement. But on paper, they're extremely strong against what Along Came a Spider has at the moment. Okay, Along Came a Spider, going to be moving around with these Warp Spiders. Looks like Warp Spiders are on capping duty for now, which I feel like there could be a better use of their time. But actually, I mean, the map control is massively in favor of Inekura. Dire Avengers also do now have an important role of providing the Falcon with repairs, but he does have 2 Dire Avenger squads. Las Cannon heavy weapon team targeting the Falcon. Looks like it's now doesn't have sight of the Falcon. And the Immolate ability does go down, putting a lot of damage on the heavy weapon team. Getting pretty close to wiping it, actually. 40 hit points-ish. And the Guardian weapon team will open fire on the heavy weapon team, so it gets the suppression first. Eventually, we might see a burst of fire from the heavy weapon team. No, it looks like it's just going to move out of there, just taking too much damage from the Guardian weapon team and just retreats out of there. Infiltrated anti-armor kit stormtroopers are hunting for a Falcon, but they don't see it. They're burning energy at the moment. I think they have to de-infiltrate, otherwise they won't have enough energy for a melt-a-bomb when they get uninfiltrated. Looks like here, okay, they're going to choose to open fire on the Guardian weapon team, going right in the face of some stormtroopers. So actually not a bad ambush there. But man, look at the way the warp spiders are just shredding this heavy weapon team. Heavy weapon team just can't last there. Warp spiders will teleport to a different location. Yeah, I mean, the warp spiders are just going to shred anything they deal with at the moment. Warp spiders do approximately, with their Exarch, they also have the aspect of the warp spider. I'm pretty sure the total DPS of the warp spiders is approximately 100 DPS. It might actually be a bit higher. Along Came a Spider says, can't counter DSI. I think that's a typo. Probably means spiders. So yeah, this game spiraled massively out of control for Along Came a Spider. Triple cap, 432 to 174, and that will be the concede called for Along Came a Spider. So our series will be evened up at 2-2, and we will be going on to a final game to decide who moves on to the finals of Elite League Season 5. Game number 5 of our Best of 5 series, the final game, will be taking place on Selenon Island. Along Came a Spider, choosing to bring out his namesake hero, the Warp Spider Exarch, teleporting ranged commander for the Eldar. And his opponent, Inekura, will be playing as the Inquisitor. We've already seen this hero before, control hero, battlefield manipulation, and spell hero for the Imperial Guard. Now, it surprises me a little bit to see Inekura on the Inquisitor, because he himself was saying in that last game that, or maybe it was even the game before, or maybe it was both, that Imperial Guard is not good in the current state of Elite Mod with the current patch. And yet, he put all 3 Imperial Guard heroes in his hero pool. So I don't know if it's maybe just that's what he's very practiced as, that's what he's very comfortable with, but he put all 3 Imperial Guard heroes in his hero pool. And I gotta call out the elephant in the room here, which is the fact that Imperial Guard currently has a 0% win rate in this series. Anytime a player so far has gone Imperial Guard in this match, they have lost, regardless of which player it was. Now, unfortunately for Inekura, that's him at this moment, so he's going to have to pull up some miraculous plays here to see if he can pull out this victory. Strangely, though, as much as I talked about how we typically don't see Banshees against Imperial Guard, we see them right here from Along Came a Spider. So, again, that can be tough for him to get value out of them. However, it looks like the plan right here is to actually just run them over to the generator farm. Looks like he's running past them, actually. Okay, no, there was just a move order near the generator farm, probably clicking on the map or the mini-map, and now he redirects them to dealing with the generators. And I think this is just about the best use you can have out of the Banshees in Tier 1 against Imperial Guard, since at least when they're in melee with the generators, and they know they will actually get in melee with the generators, they will get some damage resistance from range attacks. And, of course, the generators won't fight back. With their power melee damage, they do decent damage against the generators. Here they will be scared off a bit, but they already killed one generator. If they get out of here without losing a single model, I think it's a trade in their favor. Honestly, even if they lose a model, it might be a trade in their favor. And he's still keeping them in here. They're just taking some shots. I think he's trying to just soft retreat them back, see if he can just walk them out of there. But eventually he will need to actually retreat with the X button to prevent a model loss from happening. And he was getting pretty close to the point where a model probably would have been killed if he had not hit the retreat button. Okay, Guardian Weapon Team opens fire on the Sentinel. And we've seen the use of setup teams against Imperial Guards seeming pretty strong in this matchup. Inekura only with the artillery spotters at the moment. No second artillery spotter, no Catachan Devils. Of course, he actually hasn't had the resources to get either one of those yet, if we even see those coming. He's already got four units aside from his commander, so that usually is the standard amount of units that are purchased for most armies in Tier 1. Warp Spider Exarch, meanwhile, is in melee with the Guardsmen, and a grenade is going off over here that I am missing. So along came a Spider with a lead in map control and victory points at the moment, which is obviously, for much of this series, it has been pretty rare for Along Came a Spider to be in the lead in map control, even in the games that he has won. But I think certainly the help of the Warp Spider Exarch, who is a hero who is strong at map control, might be helping him. Inquisitor will have to get out of there. Grenade attempted on retreat. Meant for the Inquisitor. Ends up killing a Banshee model instead. Now, if we're going to take a look at some upgrades, it doesn't look like the Warp Spider Exarch has anything. However, the Inquisitor has the Interrogator's armor, and that is a armor war gear that allows the Inquisitor to infiltrate an allied infantry unit. Now, at the moment, it's pretty clear that that ability, which is actually called Silently, will go on the Inquisitor herself. She's really the only one who benefits significantly from it. Later on in the game, in Tier 2, we could see it being put on Ogryns. And I think that's also just one way that he intends to deal with these setup teams, since there are no Rangers out for Along Came a Spider. So he doesn't actually have any form of detection. So the idea is use that silently, get the Inquisitor around the firing arc. However, in this case, it looks like he only got around one firing arc and finds himself getting suppressed by the other Guardian weapon team, which is inside this garrison. He will be able to scare Along Came a Spider off of the field this time, but it is a pretty significant victory point lead in favor of Along Came a Spider. 484 to 327, 2-0 cap. Inekura looking to make it a 2-1 at the moment. Actually going to see if he can make it a 2-1 in his favor with these guardsmen moving over on this side. Still actually having control of this contested requisition point. Don't think Along Came a Spider ever took that one back. Inquisitor was pretty low there, but does retreat out in time. Only taking some light damage from the Dire Avengers. Don't even think she was getting hit by all 5 of the models. And what's coming along here? It is the Howling Banshees. They do not have their aspect. And again, we actually see, yeah, I think their intention at the moment, the use of the Howling Banshees is actually mostly just meant for the generator bashing potential. And especially as Inekura is kept busy on this side by the Dire Avengers, by the Guardian weapon teams, the Howling Banshees are currently being unanswered right there. They will take down one generator momentarily. Now we see a response. Problem is, certainly Sentinel by itself, okay, doing some damage. Oh my god, words. Banshees are now being focused down quite a bit. Can they get out of here without losing a model, though? Wow, they were kept in there just barely long enough to not lose a model. Guardian weapon team is pretty low, but there is another one set up to cover the approach. Inquisitor, I don't know if I actually like her using Hammer of the Witches there and giving away her position. Okay, she does go back to being infiltrated. And that is enough actually to buy the Sentinel time to actually get in range to stomp the Guardian weapon team. So that is going to be the Guardian weapons team's forced off for Along Came a Spider. Inekura now has the chance to move out, maybe see if he can even get a cap on Along Came a Spider's natural victory point, since he is about to lose the contested victory point to the Dire Avengers. Looks like he was able to get the decap with the Sentinel, but there wasn't a full cap on the victory point. So a significant VP deficit for Inekura. Inekura is managing to fight off Along Came a Spider to some degree. I think he's done a better job with Imperial Guard than most other times people were playing Imperial Guard in this series, but he's still struggling. He's sometimes stalling out the victory points, but he's having trouble really getting them to go in his favor. He's now committing much of his army over to this side of the map. Sentinel is slowly bashing this generator, which I'm not sure is a... Well, I don't know. I was going to say I'm not sure if it's a great use of his time. Because since the problem is that Along Came a Spider can see this, and since he can see it, he knows that he can just move in to Inekura's natural victory point. He can take it back, and this means he puts a lot of victory point. The victory point pressure against Inekura does not let up, and Inekura moving his units over to that side does allow that to happen. Okay, missile launcher Sentinel has been upgraded on the Sentinel. We did see some burst damage right there as the frag missiles connected with the Dire Avengers. I also think that's something that could be a decent answer as we see those frag missiles going in on the Guardian weapon team. I don't even think that was the full barrage. So there's a full barrage, 3 missiles. Pretty nice damage against the Guardian weapon team. A few of those, and the Guardian weapon team will have to move off. And we also see just the long range that the Sentinel can actually target the Guardian weapon team from. However, it still is a little bit on the slow side. And now we see a Falcon out from Along Came a Spider. Small army again for Inekura. He's in tier 2, no Chimera, no anything else. At this point, maybe instead of Chimera, maybe get a heavy weapon team first as just something to slow down that Falcon a bit more. Otherwise, I think Along Came a Spider can really just exert his will here and just move in with the Falcon, move in with the Warp Spider, the Dire Avengers, the Guardian Weapons teams, and just burn down the whole generator farm. Okay, Inquisitor now has been upgraded with the Inferno Pistol, but she's taken a little too much damage to finish off the Falcon. Inferno Pistol is effectively a melt-a-gun for the Inquisitor, does melt the damage, also comes with the Judgment ability, which is an interesting ability. Don't always see this weapon upgrade, so you don't always see that ability, and it can sometimes be a difficult ability to use. Judgment, basically, you cast it once and it marks a target, and then there is a cooldown before you can use Judgment again, and if the unit that you marked is still present, you hit it pretty hard just with a very powerful ability. It says 300 Judge Shot AV damage. So there is the Judgment mark. So again, you can't immediately use Judgment again. There's a cooldown. Now, he did use Judgment on the Guardian weapon team, so there is Judgment after that cooldown eventually did happen. Did bring the Guardian weapon team pretty low on hit points. If anything, I would like it better on the Falcon, since that's something that could really scare the Falcon off the field. Like, even if it doesn't necessarily kill the Falcon, having the mark on it could scare the Falcon off, not wanting to risk getting hit by Judgment and waiting until it has worn off. Hell Fury Strike goes down on the Guardian weapon team, so they will retreat out of there. And Howling Banshee still with no mark. I don't really know about this approach. Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of why Howling Banshees are typically regarded as not being effective in this matchup. And that was a very linear approach with no support whatsoever, counters being right there in plain sight. So the Banshees really don't achieve anything there. Like I don't even know if I like the idea of trying to use them in that engagement. Certainly not by themselves approaching first. Falcon is really low, though, and it actually gets finished off. I guess sorry, not Falcon. Sentinel got really low there and was finished off. I guess maybe underestimating the range of the Falcon. And Inekura actually going to tier 3, attempting to go to tier 3. He does have the double cap for the time being, but how long can he keep it with such a smaller army? Going to be a Warp Spider call-in for Along Came a Spider. They get knocked over by the artillery spotters. But, I mean, you know, I talked about just how effective those Warp Spiders were against Imperial Guard in the last game against what Along Came a Spider had. This is, not only is this no different, or if it is different, it's actually even worse for Inekura as the guard player dealing against these Warp Spiders, dealing with these Warp Spiders. He has such a small army. The Warp Spiders just heavily outgun his guardsman squads, particularly if they get an Exarch. So generator farm will be taken down. Just high base damage out of the Warp Spiders also means they will burn down the generator pretty quickly. However, they are also taking a lot of damage. I think the Warp Spiders might actually have to get off the field pretty soon. They do lose a model, so they might actually need to retreat. The Warp Spider's very good on paper, but I don't think they were used too well. That's an anti-grav grenade. That's an ability out of the Warp Spider Exarch. Not that commonly seen. Accessory gives him the anti-gravity grenade. We do see it used there, just levitating a unit in place. By itself, not actually super effective. But if you combine it with like actual plasma grenades out of the Dire Avengers, it can actually set up some pretty devastating combos. It's now a triple cap against Inekura. He is running out of time fast. Guardsmen looking for this capture point, but this is actually one of the few times when the Howling Banshee's really going to be getting a lot of value here. They can either zone the Guardsmen off the point. If the Guardsmen actually try to capture the point, they will get ripped apart by the Banshees. So actually, that's why we see more units committed to capturing this point. Banshees now do need to get out of here, but committing so many resources here just for the contested victory point. It's only one victory point, and it's going to make it have him almost no chance of contesting either of these victory points. So he'll start the decap here. I don't know if he has the time to get a decap on another victory point. I think the best chance he has is probably infiltrating the Stormtroopers and then looking for a decap on Along Came a Spider's natural. But that's very much a buying time strategy. And they're not even moving. What's going on here? He's got no time. Trying to drop a Hell Fury strike, moves the Guardian weapon team back, but they just get inside the Falcon. Then they'll be able to get back out and set back up again. Inquisitor tries to get this. She's briefly revealed. Dire Avengers even move close enough to detect her, and she will just be ripped apart. She gets the decap, but there's no way that's enough. Hell Fury strike. No, sorry, just kidding. That's just one of the artillery shells from the artillery spotters. Slightly delaying the inevitable. Because at this point, I really don't see a way that Along Came a Spider can win this series in his favor. What are the Guardsmen doing? Oh no, Guardsmen don't even start the decap. All right, oh my god. Look at these Stormtroopers getting ripped apart even just by range fire. Warp Spiders were teleported into their retreat path. Could have forced melee, but it wasn't even necessary. Along Came a Spider calls the GG. And I think that's gonna have to be it. There's no way at this point that Inekura comes back to this. Still putting the Inquisitor on the capture point. But this has to be over. Yeah, another squad was killed by the Warp Spiders. I guess Inekura is just kind of playing it out to the very end. I don't even have much more to say other than that should be finally game in favor of Along Came a Spider, who takes the series in a 3-2 fashion and moves on to the finals of Elite League Division B. That is it for our series tonight. I do hope you enjoyed it, and I do hope you have a good night.